Gas stations are meant to be quick stops. Lights on, doors open, in and out. But late at night, when the road is empty and only one car is parked outside, some places feel like they don't want you to leave. I don't drive at night anymore. Not after what happened at that gas station off Route 9. And I know how that sounds: paranoid, irrational, like I'm overreacting to something that probably has a logical explanation. But I'm telling you right now, there are some things you can't explain away. Some things that logic doesn't touch. And what I saw that night, what I felt, it wasn't logical. It wasn't normal. And it sure as hell wasn't human. My name's Aaron. I'm 27 now, but I was 24 when this happened. I was working 2 jobs back then, one at a warehouse during the day, another stocking shelves at a grocery store at night. Money was tight. My mom had gotten sick, medical bills were piling up, and I was doing everything I could to help her out. So yeah, I was exhausted, running on fumes most days. That night was no different. It was mid-October, cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes everything feel heavy. I remember because I'd left my jacket at home and regretted it the second I stepped outside after my shift. It was around 2 a.m. when I finally clocked out. The store was dead quiet, just me and the night manager locking up. I got in my car, turned the heat on full blast, and started the drive home. I should have filled up the tank earlier. I knew I was low, but I was so tired, so ready to just collapse into bed, that I kept pushing it. Then the low fuel light came on. Of course it did. I sighed, rubbed my eyes, and took the next exit. Route 9. There was a gas station there, one of those old, run-down places that looks like it got stuck in the 80s and never bothered to update. Flickering neon sign, cracked pavement, a single attendant sitting behind bulletproof glass, half asleep and staring at a tiny TV. I pulled up to pump 3. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed and flickered, casting this sickly yellow glow over everything. It made the whole place feel wrong, unwelcoming. I told myself I was just tired, that I was letting exhaustion mess with my head. I turned off the engine, got out, and that's when I felt it. Cold air, colder than it should have been. And this smell, faint at first but noticeable, like wet dirt mixed with something metallic. Rust maybe, or old blood. I looked around, trying to figure out where it was coming from. That's when I saw him, a man, standing by pump 5, just standing there, staring at me. He wasn't moving, wasn't pumping gas, wasn't doing anything, just staring. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing dark clothes, jeans and a jacket, I think. But his face, I couldn't make out his face. The shadows seemed to cling to him, like the light couldn't quite reach where he was standing. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Something about him was off. The way he stood, the way he didn't blink, the way he just looked at me. I told myself he was just another traveler, another tired soul stopping for gas in the middle of the night. Nothing unusual, nothing to worry about. I turned away, focused on the pump. My hands were shaking a little, but I blamed it on the cold. I swiped my card, started filling the tank. The numbers on the screen climbed slowly. I kept my eyes down, tried to ignore the feeling crawling under my skin, but I couldn't help it. I glanced up. He was closer now. Pump 4, right next to pump 5. He'd moved, and I hadn't heard a single footstep. Not one. The pavement was quiet. The night was quiet, but somehow he'd gotten closer without making a sound. My heart started pounding. I stared at him, waiting for him to do something, anything, but he just stood there, staring. That same blank, unblinking stare. I could feel my breath quickening. My hands were trembling now, and it wasn't from the cold. I looked down at the pump, focused on the numbers, told myself I was imagining things, that I was tired, that my mind was playing tricks on me. I just needed to finish pumping, get back in the car, and go home. That's all. Just finish and leave. 2 seconds. I looked down for 2 seconds to grab my wallet from my pocket. When I looked up, he was at pump 3, right next to me, less than 5 feet away. I froze. My entire body locked up. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He was right there, close enough that I could see the details now. His clothes were dirty, stained. His hands hung at his sides, pale and too thin. But his face, God, his face, it was wrong, sunken, gray. His eyes were dark, hollow, like empty pits, and his mouth was slightly open, like he was about to say something but never did. And the smell, that rotten, earthy smell, it was coming from him. It was overwhelming now, thick and nauseating, like decay and rust and something ancient. I stumbled backward, yanking the nozzle out of my car. Gas spilled onto the pavement, but I didn't care. I turned and ran, straight toward the station. My legs felt weak, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. I slammed through the door, the bell above it ringing loud and shrill. The attendant looked up, startled. He was an older guy, maybe 50, with graying hair and a tired face. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. I couldn't get the words out at first. I was breathing too hard, my chest heaving. There's a man out there," I finally managed. "By the pumps. He's just standing there, staring. Call the cops. Please." The attendant frowned. He leaned forward, squinting through the glass toward the pumps. "What man?" "Out there." I pointed. "By pump 3. He was right next to me. Right there." The attendant stood up slowly, grabbed a flashlight, and walked toward the door. He stepped outside, shining the light across the lot. I watched from inside, my hands pressed against the glass. He walked past my car, past pump 3, past pump 4 and 5. He looked around, checked behind the pumps, even walked toward the edge of the lot where the darkness started. Then he came back inside. "There's nobody out there, man." "What?" My voice cracked. No, he was there. I saw him. He was standing right next to me. The attendant gave me this look. Not unkind, but skeptical, like he thought I was on something. "Look, I've been watching the cameras all night. Nobody's come in except you. Check the footage," I said. "Please, just check it." He sighed, but he did it. He pulled up the feed on the little monitor behind the counter. I stood next to him, watching. The timestamp showed my car pulling in, me getting out, me standing at pump 3, the numbers climbing on the screen, me looking around, me looking down, me suddenly jerking back and running inside. But there was no one else. The other pumps were empty. The lot was empty. It was just me. The whole time. Just me. "See?" the attendant said quietly. "Nobody there." I stared at the screen. My mouth went dry. "That's not possible." "Maybe you're just tired," he offered. "Long shift." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because I knew what I saw. I knew what I smelled. And I knew that I'd felt something. Presence. Breath. Cold, rancid breath on the back of my neck just before I ran. The cops showed up about 10 minutes later. I told them everything. They were polite, professional. They checked the lot, checked the footage, asked me questions. But in the end, they said the same thing the attendant did. There was no one there. One of the officers, a woman in her 30s, pulled me aside before they left. "You sure you're okay to drive?" she asked. "You look pretty shaken up." "I'm fine," I lied. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "Get some rest. And maybe lay off the night shifts for a while." I drove home in silence. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't think, just drove. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I expected to see him, sitting in the back seat, staring. But he wasn't there. When I got home, I locked every door, every window. I turned on every light in the apartment. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I kept seeing his face, those hollow eyes, that gray, sunken skin, and I kept smelling that rot, that wet, earthy decay that clung to him like a shroud. I went back to that gas station a few weeks later. Daylight, busy. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed to prove to myself it was real, that I wasn't losing my mind. I talked to the attendant again, a different guy this time. I asked if anything strange had ever happened there. He laughed, said no, just the usual late-night drunks and weirdos. But as I was leaving, an older woman was pumping gas next to me. She overheard me talking. She looked at me, and her face went pale. "You saw him too?" she whispered. I froze. "What?" "The man. The one who stands by the pumps. The one who moves without walking." My blood turned to ice. "Who is he?" She shook her head. "I don't know, but I've seen him. Twice. And both times he got closer." She looked terrified. "I don't stop here anymore." She drove off before I could ask anything else. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if it was a ghost, a hallucination, or something worse. But I know it was real. I know I wasn't alone. And I know that whatever that thing was, it's still there, waiting, watching, moving closer to whoever's unlucky enough to stop. I don't drive at night anymore, and I'll never stop at that gas station again. Because some things you just don't come back from. I still hear her voice sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and I'm lying in bed trying to sleep. Soft, desperate. "Please? Can you help me?" And every time I hear it, I'm back there. Back at that gas station. Back in that moment when I made the worst decision of my life. My name's Daniel. I'm 31 now, but I was 28 when this happened. I was driving back from a work conference in Sacramento, heading home to Los Angeles. It was late July, one of those brutal summer nights where the heat doesn't let up even after the sun goes down. The air was thick, humid, suffocating. I remember my shirt sticking to my back, the AC in my car barely keeping up. I'd been on the road for hours, and I was exhausted. My eyes felt heavy. My head was pounding. I just wanted to get home, but I needed gas and coffee, maybe something to eat. So when I saw the sign for a station just outside Bakersfield, I took the exit. The place was one of those rundown stops you see off highways in the middle of nowhere. Dim lighting, cracked asphalt, a faded sign that flickered on and off like it was struggling to stay alive. There were only 2 other cars in the lot, both parked near the convenience store. I pulled up to a pump, turned off the engine, and stepped out into the thick, stagnant air. The smell hit me immediately. Burnt coffee, motor oil, something sour and rotten underneath it all. It made my stomach turn, but I ignored it. I just wanted to fill up and get out of there. I swiped my card and started pumping. The numbers climbed slowly on the screen. I leaned against the car, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake off the exhaustion. That's when I heard it. A voice, faint, coming from somewhere behind me. "Please? Can you help me?" I froze. The voice was soft, desperate. A woman's voice. I looked around, but I didn't see anyone. The lot was empty except for the 2 cars by the store, and no one was near them. I told myself I was hearing things, that I was just tired. But then I heard it again. "Please, I need help." It was coming from the side of the building, near the dumpsters. I hesitated. Every instinct in my body told me to get back in the car and leave. But I couldn't, because what if someone actually needed help? What if someone was hurt? I walked toward the voice, slowly. My footsteps echoed in the quiet. The fluorescent light above the dumpsters flickered and buzzed, casting long, jittery shadows across the pavement. And that's when I saw her, a woman, standing near the dumpsters, just standing there. She was pale, too pale. Her skin looked almost gray in the weak light, like all the color had been drained out of her. She was wearing a white dress, stained, dirty. It hung off her thin frame like it was too big for her. Her hair was long and tangled, falling over her face in greasy strands. She looked lost, broken, like she'd been wandering for days. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice cautious. She turned to look at me, and I felt my chest tighten. Her eyes. Something was wrong with her eyes. They were too wide, too empty, and they didn't blink. Not once. "My car broke down," she said quietly. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "Can you give me a ride?" I should have said no. I should have walked away right then. But I didn't, because despite everything, despite the wrongness of the situation, despite the sinking feeling in my gut, I told myself she was just someone who needed help, a stranded traveler, a woman in trouble, And I wasn't going to be the kind of person who turned my back on someone in need. Yeah, I said. Where do you need to go? She didn't answer right away. She just stared at me with those unblinking eyes. Then finally she nodded. Thank you. I led her back to my car. The gas pump had already clicked off. I replaced the nozzle, screwed the cap back on, and opened the back door for her. She climbed in without a word, moving stiffly, like her joints didn't quite work right. I got in the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. For the first few minutes, she didn't say anything. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror a couple of times, but she was just sitting there, staring straight ahead. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her face was expressionless. I tried to make small talk, asked her where she was headed, but she didn't respond. The silence was suffocating. And then I noticed the smell. That same rotten smell from the gas station, but stronger now, filled the car, thick and nauseating, like decay, like something that had been left out in the heat too long. I cracked the window, but it didn't help. The smell clung to everything. I told myself it was just her clothes, that she'd been stranded for a while and hadn't had a chance to clean up. But the smell, it wasn't just dirt. It was something else, something wrong. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. I kept driving, kept glancing at her in the mirror. She hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, just sat there staring. And then I saw it, her reflection in the rearview mirror. She was smiling, a wide, stretched grin that didn't belong on a human face. Her lips were pulled back, revealing her teeth. And her teeth, God, her teeth, they were black, rotten, like they'd been stained with something dark and old. My blood turned to ice. My hands tightened on the wheel. I tried to keep my breathing steady, tried to tell myself I was seeing things. But I wasn't. She was smiling, and she wasn't blinking. I slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a halt in the middle of the empty road. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I whipped around in my seat, ready to confront her, ready to demand answers. But the back seat was empty. She was gone. Just gone. The seat where she'd been sitting was empty. The door was still closed. Locked. There was no way she could have gotten out. But she wasn't there. I sat there, frozen, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The smell was still there. Thick, oppressive. But she was gone. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember pulling into my driveway or walking into my apartment. I just remember sitting on my couch, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of what had happened, trying to convince myself it was a hallucination, exhaustion, stress, something. But I couldn't shake the image of her smile, those black teeth, those empty, unblinking eyes. A week later, I drove back to that gas station. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that it was real. I pulled into the lot, parked near the pumps, and went inside. The same burnt coffee smell, the same flickering lights. I walked up to the counter where an older man was working. He looked tired, bored. "Hey," I said, my voice shaky. "I was here about a week ago, late at night. There was a woman, near the dumpsters. White dress. Did you see her?" He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed. "You saw her too, huh?" My stomach dropped. "What?" "A woman died here," he said quietly. "About 5 years ago. Car accident. Right out there, near the dumpsters. She was wearing a white dress. They say she was on her way to meet someone. Never made it." He paused, then looked me dead in the eye. "People see her sometimes. Late at night. She asks for help. For a ride. But if you let her in." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I left without another word. I got in my car and drove away, my hands shaking on the wheel. I haven't been back since. And I never will. Because I know now what I saw. I know what got into my car that night. And I know how close I came to something I can't even name. I still hear her voice sometimes. "Please? Can you help me?" And every time I do, I feel that same cold dread crawl up my spine. Because I know she's still out there. Still waiting. Still asking. And I know that one day someone else will say yes. I'll never forget the sound. 3 slow knocks. Tap, tap, tap. It's been 3 years, and I still hear it sometimes. Late at night when the house settles, when the wind picks up, when I'm alone, and every time I hear something that even remotely sounds like knocking, my entire body locks up. My chest tightens. My hands start to shake. Because I know what's out there. I know what I saw, and I know it wasn't human. My name's Kyle. I'm 29 now, but I was 26 when this happened. I was working as a sales rep back then, traveling all over the Northwest trying to close deals and meet quotas. It was exhausting work. Long drives, cheap motels, fast food and gas station coffee. But it paid the bills and I was good at it. I didn't mind being on the road. At least I didn't until that night. It was February, middle of winter. I was driving back from a client meeting in Kalispell, Montana, heading south toward Missoula. The meeting had run late, and by the time I got on the road, it was already past midnight. I should have stayed the night, found a motel, waited until morning, but I was tired of motels, tired of being away from home, so I decided to push through. Big mistake. The snow started about 20 minutes into the drive. Light at first, just a few flakes drifting down through my headlights. But it got heavier, fast. Within an hour, it was a full-blown blizzard. Thick, heavy snow coming down in sheets, covering the road, making it almost impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The windshield wipers were working overtime, barely keeping up. My hands were clenched tight on the wheel, my shoulders tense, my eyes straining to see the road. I was the only car out there. No one else was stupid enough to be driving in this. The highway was empty, silent except for the wind howling against the car and the steady thump-thump-thump of the wipers. Felt like I was driving through the end of the world. Just me and the snow and the darkness pressing in from all sides. I saw the gas station about an hour in. A small, rundown place sitting alone off the side of the highway. One of those forgotten stops that somehow still hangs on even though no one goes there anymore. The lights were on, dim and flickering, barely visible through the snow. My gas tank was hovering just above empty, and I knew I wouldn't make it to the next town without stopping. So I pulled in. The lot was empty. No other cars. No movement. Just the wind and the snow and the cold. I parked near the pump, turned off the engine, and stepped out into the freezing air. It hit me like a wall. The wind cut through my jacket, biting at my skin, making my eyes water. I could barely see the building through the snow. It was one of those old stations with a single attendant inside and a couple of sad-looking pumps out front. The kind of place that feels like it's stuck in time. I filled up the tank as fast as I could, my fingers numb and clumsy. The cold was brutal. My breath came out in thick clouds, and I could feel the snow soaking through my jeans. When the pump clicked off, I practically ran inside. The warmth hit me immediately. It wasn't much. The heater inside was struggling just as hard as everything else in that place, but it was better than outside. The attendant was an older guy, maybe 60, sitting behind the counter reading a worn paperback. He glanced up at me, nodded, and went back to his book. I grabbed a coffee from the machine in the corner, paid for the gas, and headed back out. That's when it happened. I was walking back to my car, coffee in hand, when I heard it. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, tap, 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 coming from my driver's side window. I stopped. My heart skipped. I looked at the car. No one was there. The windows were covered in snow, but I could see through them well enough. There was no one standing next to my car. No one in the lot at all. Just me. I told myself it was the wind. A branch. Ice falling from the roof. Something. I walked to the car, opened the door, and got in. Locked the doors immediately. My hands were shaking, but I blamed it on the cold. I started the engine, cranked the heat up, and sat there for a moment, trying to calm down. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time on the passenger side. My blood turned to ice. I whipped my head to the right, staring at the window. Nothing. No one. Just snow and darkness and the faint glow of the gas station lights behind me. But I'd heard it, clear as day. 3 knocks. right on the glass. My heart was pounding now. My breathing was shallow, fast. I told myself it was nothing, that I was tired, that the storm was messing with my head. But my hands were trembling as I threw the car into reverse. Before I could move, my headlights swept across the lot. And that's when I saw him, a man, crouched low, on all fours, right in front of my car. He was crawling, slowly, deliberately, moving toward me like some kind of animal. His head was tilted at an angle that wasn't right, too far to the side, like his neck was broken. And his mouth, God, his mouth was open, wide, too wide, like his jaw was unhinged. I froze, every muscle in my body locked up. My brain was screaming at me to move, to do something, but I couldn't. I just stared at him, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. He kept crawling, closer, his hands, pale, dirty, too thin, pressed into the snow, leaving deep prints. His eyes were fixed on me, dark, empty, unblinking, and he was smiling, that wide, wrong smile that made my stomach turn. Then he started moving faster. That snapped me out of it. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires spun in the snow for a second, then caught. The car lurched backward, and I cranked the wheel, spinning around and flooring it toward the exit. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I just drove. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I drove for an hour straight without stopping. I didn't care about the snow, didn't care about the road. I just needed to get away. Away from that place. Away from him. When I finally pulled into a motel parking lot in Missoula, I sat in the car for a long time, trying to catch my breath, trying to convince myself it was over, that I was safe. But when I finally got out and walked around to check the car, my stomach dropped. There were handprints all over the windows, muddy, smudged, pressed against the glass like someone had been trying to get in. But they were small, too small, like a child's hands. The man I saw was full-grown, tall, broad-shouldered. There was no way those prints were his. I stood there in the parking lot, staring at those prints, my mind racing. I didn't understand. I still don't. I tried to wipe them off, but the mud was frozen solid. I ended up going through a car wash the next morning just to get rid of them. I reported it to the police, told them everything. They said they'd look into it, but I never heard back. I called the gas station a few days later. No one answered. I looked it up online. Couldn't find it. No address. No reviews. Nothing. Like it didn't exist. I don't drive through Montana anymore. I take longer routes. Fly when I can. Because I know what I saw. I know what crawled toward my car that night. And I know those handprints weren't his. They belonged to something else. Something smaller. Something that was already inside. I still hear the knocking sometimes. Late at night. Tap, tap, tap. And every time I do, I check the windows. Check the locks. Check the shadows. Because I don't think it stayed in Montana. I think it followed me home. I've never told anyone this. Not my wife. Not my therapist. Not even the people closest to me. Because how do you explain something that doesn't make sense? How do you tell someone that you've been somewhere that doesn't exist? That you spoke to someone who shouldn't have known your name? You can't. They'll think you're crazy. Hell, I think I'm crazy sometimes. But I know what happened. I know what I saw. And I know that receipt in my glove box is real. Even if I wish it wasn't. My name's Michael. I'm 34 now, but I was 31 when this happened. I was working as a consultant back then, traveling constantly for work. Different cities every week. Different hotels. Different faces. It was lonely, exhausting, but it paid well. I'd gotten used to the routine. Pack a bag. Catch a flight. Do the job. Go home. Repeat. Late August 3 years ago, I was driving back from a client meeting in Nashville. It had been a long day. Hot. Humid. The kind of heat that clings to you even after the sun goes down. I'd been on the road for a few hours, and it was getting late. Around midnight, the highway was mostly empty. Just a few trucks here and there, their taillights disappearing into the darkness ahead of me. I wasn't tired. Not really. But I needed gas. And maybe a Coke. Something to keep me alert for the rest of the drive. So when I saw the sign for a gas station just off I-40, I took the exit. It was one of those small, older stations. The kind you don't see much anymore. Single building. A couple of pumps out front. Dim lighting. The sign above the door was old. The letters faded and peeling. I don't even remember what it said. Maybe I didn't pay attention. I just wanted to fill up and get back on the road. I pulled up to the pump, turned off the engine, and stepped out. The air was thick, heavy. It smelled like gasoline and asphalt with something else underneath. Something stale, old, like the place hadn't been updated in decades. The fluorescent lights above the pumps flickered weakly, casting everything in this sickly yellow glow. There was no one else there, no other cars. Just me and the hum of the lights and the distant sound of crickets in the fields beyond the lot. It was quiet, too quiet, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Small gas stations in the middle of nowhere are always like that. Empty, forgotten. I filled up the tank, paid cash, and walked inside. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and a little bell rang above my head. The inside was just as old as the outside. Cramped, dusty. Shelves lined with products that looked like they'd been sitting there for years. The linoleum floor was scuffed and cracked, and the air smelled like burnt coffee and mildew. Behind the counter was an older man, maybe 60, maybe older, hard to tell. He had gray hair, thinning on top, and a lined face that looked weathered and tired. He was wearing a stained blue work shirt with a name tag that I couldn't quite read from where I stood. He didn't look up when I came in, just kept staring down at something on the counter. A newspaper, maybe, or a magazine. I grabbed a Coke from the cooler in the back, walked up to the counter, and set it down. He looked up then, slowly. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, and he smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a welcoming one, just a smile, like he knew something I didn't. "That'll be $3.50, he said. His voice was flat, monotone, but not unkind. I handed him a $5 bill. He took it, opened the register, and counted out my change. Then he handed it to me, still smiling, and said, "Drive safe, Michael." I froze. My hand stopped halfway to the change. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. "What?" I asked. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "Drive safe," he repeated, still smiling. "No. You said my name. How do you know my name?" He tilted his head slightly, like he didn't understand the question. "You've been here before." "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, I haven't. I've never been to Tennessee before. I've never been to this station. How do you know my name?" His smile widened, just a little, just enough to make my skin crawl. "You've been here before," he said again, like it was a fact. Like there was no room for argument. I felt a chill run down my spine. My hands started to shake. I grabbed the change, shoved it in my pocket, and backed toward the door. "I haven't," I said. "I don't know what you're talking about." He didn't respond, just kept smiling, watching me, those pale, colorless eyes following my every move. I turned and pushed through the door, the bell ringing again as I stumbled out into the humid night air. My chest was tight. My breathing was fast. I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat there for a moment, trying to calm down, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He knew my name. He'd said it, clear as day, but I hadn't told him. I paid cash. I hadn't used a card. Hadn't said a single word except to ask how much the Coke was. There was no way he could have known, unless he had seen me before, but that was impossible. I'd never been to this station, never been to this part of Tennessee. I was sure of it. I pulled out my phone and opened my GPS. I wanted to see where I was, wanted to mark the location so I could report it later. Maybe look it up online, figure out what the hell was going on. But when I zoomed in on the map, my stomach dropped. The gas station wasn't there. The pin showed my location on the side of the highway, right where the exit should be. But there was no gas station, no building, no marker, nothing. I refreshed the map. Same thing. I switched to satellite view. Still nothing. Just an empty stretch of road. My hands were trembling now. I looked up, out the windshield, at the station in front of me. It was there. Right there. I could see it. The lights. The pumps. The building. It was real. But according to my GPS, it didn't exist. I threw the car in reverse, backed out of the lot, and got back on the highway. My heart was pounding. My mind was racing. I drove for about 2 miles, then turned around. I had to see it again. Had to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. When I got back to the exit, I slowed down. Looked to the right where the station should have been. It was gone. Just an empty lot, overgrown with weeds and grass. No building, no pumps, no lights, like nothing had been there in years, decades even. I pulled over onto the shoulder, got out of the car, and walked to the edge of the lot. The ground was uneven, cracked pavement covered in dirt and vegetation. There were no tire marks, no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there recently. But I had been. Less than 5 minutes ago. I'd been standing right there, pumping gas, talking to that man. I got back in the car. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I drove home in silence, my mind spinning with questions I couldn't answer. When I got home, I went straight to bed. Didn't tell my wife. Didn't tell anyone. I just tried to sleep, tried to forget. But the next morning I found the receipt. It was in my pocket, crumpled and damp from sweat. I unfolded it carefully, and my blood turned to ice. The date on the receipt was 3 years in the future. Not 3 years ago. Not yesterday. 3 years from the day I'd stopped at that station. I stared at it for a long time, my mind refusing to accept what I was seeing. I checked the date on my phone, then the date on my calendar, then the date on my computer. They all matched. The receipt was dated 3 years ahead. I keep it in my glove box now. I don't know why. Maybe because it's the only proof I have that what happened was real. That I'm not crazy. But every time I look at it, I feel that same cold dread creeping up my spine. Because the date is getting closer. And I don't know what's going to happen when it arrives. I still drive past that exit sometimes. Late at night when I'm on my way back from a job. And every time I slow down, look to the right, the lot is still empty. Overgrown, abandoned, but sometimes just for a second, I see the lights, flickering, weak, and I see the man standing behind the counter, watching, waiting, and I know deep down that one day I'm going to stop there again, whether I want to or not. I worked graveyard shifts at a 7-Eleven for 2 years. You see a lot of weird stuff when you work overnight. Drunks, drug addicts, people having mental breakdowns at 3 in the morning over a bag of chips. You learn to keep your head down, stay calm, and not ask questions. Most of the time, people just want to get their stuff and leave. But sometimes you get someone who doesn't belong. Someone who makes every instinct in your body scream that something is wrong. And when that happens, you don't forget it. Ever. My name's Jessica. I'm 26 now. But I was 23 when this happened. I was working nights to pay my way through community college, trying to get a degree in graphic design. The pay wasn't great, but it was quiet most of the time, and I could study between customers. The store was in a decent neighborhood, not too rough, not too safe, just average. The kind of place where nothing really happens. Until it did. It was a Tuesday, early September, around 3 a.m. The store was dead. No customers for over an hour. Just me, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the low buzz of the refrigerators in the back. I was behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, trying to stay awake. My shift didn't end until 6, and the nights always dragged when it was this quiet. That's when the door chimed. I looked up. A guy walked in, tall, maybe 6'2", 6'3", wearing a black hoodie pulled up over his head. And sunglasses, at 3 a.m. inside a brightly lit convenience store. That should have been my first warning. But I'd seen weirder. I figured he was high, or paranoid, or both. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge me at all. Just walked straight past the counter and into the aisles. Slowly, deliberately, like he was looking for something specific but in no rush to find it. I watched him for a minute, then went back to my phone. Kept one eye on the security monitor mounted behind the counter. The camera feeds cycled through different angles of the store, aisles 1 through 4, the coolers, the front door, the storage room. I could see him on aisle 3, standing in front of the chips. Not moving, just standing there. A few minutes passed. He still hadn't picked anything up. Hadn't moved. I started to feel uneasy. That cold, prickly sensation at the back of your neck when something doesn't feel right. I glanced at the monitor again. He was on aisle 2 now, still not picking anything up. Just standing, staring at the camera. My stomach tightened. I told myself I was being paranoid, that he was probably just stoned out of his mind, spacing out in the snack aisle. But my hands were already reaching for my phone, pulling up my manager's number just in case. I looked back at the monitor. He was on aisle 1 now, closer to the counter, and he was staring directly at the camera again. Not at the products, not at the shelves, at the camera, like he knew I was watching. My heart started to beat faster. I put my phone down on the counter, keeping it within reach, and looked up. I couldn't see him from where I was standing. The aisles blocked my view, but I could feel him. I could feel his presence getting closer. I glanced at the monitor again. He was at the end of aisle 1 now, right at the edge of the frame, and then he stepped forward into view of the front camera. He was standing about 10 feet from the counter, just standing there, staring at me through those dark sunglasses. I swallowed hard. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there. I grabbed my phone and texted my manager. "Weird guy in the store. Won't leave. What do I do?" The reply came back almost immediately. "Ask him to leave. If he doesn't, call the cops." I took a deep breath and looked up. "Sir, if you're not going to buy anything, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Nothing. No response. No movement. My hands were shaking now. I could feel the adrenaline starting to kick in, that fight or flight response screaming at me to do something. I looked back at the monitor, just for a second, to see where he was. He was gone. I blinked, looked at the screen again. All the camera angles. He wasn't in the aisles, wasn't by the coolers, wasn't at the front of the store. He was just gone. I stood up, leaning over the counter to look down the aisles. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the empty store. No answer. I walked around the counter, my legs feeling weak and unsteady, and checked each aisle one by one. Empty. All of them. The store was completely empty. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. Because if he wasn't in the store, where the hell did he go? I hadn't heard the door chime, hadn't seen him leave. He was just gone. I hurried back to the counter and locked the front door. My hands were trembling as I turned the deadbolt. I didn't care if it was against policy. I wasn't taking any chances. I went back behind the counter, sat down, and tried to steady my breathing. That's when I looked at the monitor again. He was in the storage room. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. He was standing in the middle of the storage room, facing the camera. Still wearing the hoodie, still wearing the sunglasses, just standing there, staring. But the storage room door was locked. I had the key. It was on a chain around my neck. There was no way he could have gotten in there. No way. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. "There's someone in my store," I said, my voice cracking. "He's in the back. I don't know how he got in. Please, I need help." The dispatcher told me to stay on the line, told me officers were on the way. I kept my eyes glued to the monitor, watching him. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. And then, slowly, he raised one hand and pointed at the camera. At me. I dropped the phone. My entire body was shaking. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I ran out from behind the counter, unlocked the front door, and bolted outside into the parking lot. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop. I ran to the edge of the lot, as far from the store as I could get, and waited. The cops showed up about 5 minutes later. 2 officers. They went inside, searched the entire store. The aisles, the coolers, the storage room. They checked the cameras, checked the locks, checked everything. They came back out and told me the same thing I already knew. There was no one inside. The storage room door was still locked. No sign of forced entry. No sign anyone had been in there at all. Except the door was open. When I went back inside with the officers, the storage room door was standing wide open. And on the floor, in the layer of dust that had accumulated near the back shelves, someone had written 2 words with their finger. "I'll be back." I quit 3 days later. Told my manager I couldn't do it anymore. Didn't give a reason. Didn't explain. I just left. But he did come back. 3 nights after the first time. I wasn't working that shift. Thank God. But the girl who replaced me called me, terrified, asking if I'd ever seen a tall guy in a hoodie and sunglasses. She said he came in around 3 a.m., walked the aisles, and then disappeared. She locked herself in the bathroom until her shift ended. I still see him sometimes. Not in the store. I don't go to that part of town anymore. But I see him other places. Gas stations, mostly. Late at night. Standing under the lights. Far enough away that I can't make out his face. But close enough that I know it's him. He never comes closer. Never approaches. Just stands there. Watching. And I know deep down that he's waiting. Waiting for the right moment. The right place. The right time. Because whatever he wants, he hasn't gotten it yet. And I don't think he's going to stop until he does. I still can't look at mirrors the same way. I avoid them when I can. Public restrooms, fitting rooms, even the mirror in my own bathroom. I keep my eyes down, focus on my hands, try not to see anything else. Because once you've seen something you can't explain, something that shouldn't exist, you can't unsee it. It stays with you, in the back of your mind, in the corner of your eye, waiting. My name's Brandon. I'm 30 now, but I was 27 when this happened. I was driving down the coast, taking the scenic route from Seattle to San Francisco. It was supposed to be a solo road trip. Time to clear my head after a rough breakup. Just me, the open road, and whatever podcasts I could download. I thought it would help. I thought the distance would make things easier. I was wrong. But that's not what this story is about. It was mid-November. Cold. Rainy. The kind of weather that makes everything feel gray and heavy. I've been driving for hours, stopping only for gas and food, trying to make good time. But by the time I hit rural Oregon, it was late. Past midnight. The roads were empty, winding through thick forests and small towns that looked like they'd been abandoned years ago. My gas light came on, and I cursed under my breath. I hadn't seen a station in miles. About 10 minutes later, I spotted one. A small, rundown place sitting alone off the side of the road. The sign was old, barely visible in the rain. But the lights were on, and that was all that mattered. I pulled in, parked near the pump, and got out. The air was freezing. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the cold cut right through my jacket. I filled up the tank as fast as I could, my fingers numb and clumsy. When I finished, I went inside to pay. The attendant was an older guy, maybe in his 50s, sitting behind the counter with a newspaper spread out in front of him. He barely looked up when I walked in. I paid for the gas and was about to leave when I felt it. That uncomfortable pressure in my bladder that I'd been ignoring for the last hour. I glanced toward the back of the store and saw a door marked restroom. I hesitated. I didn't want to use a gas station bathroom in the middle of nowhere. But I didn't have much of a choice. I walked to the back, pushed open the door, and immediately regretted it. The bathroom was disgusting. Small. Cramped. The floor was cracked linoleum, stained and peeling at the edges. The walls were covered in chipped paint and graffiti. And the smell, God, the smell. Mildew. Rust. Something sweet and rotten underneath it all. Like old fruit left to decay. The light above the sink flickered weakly, casting the room in this sickly, uneven glow. I almost walked out, but I'd already driven hours, and I didn't know when I'd find another stop, so I stayed. I did what I needed to do, then walked over to the sink to wash my hands. The faucet was rusted, the water that came out cold and slightly brown. I scrubbed my hands quickly, trying not to breathe through my nose, and looked up at the mirror. That's when I saw her. A girl, standing behind me, maybe 8 or 9 years old. She had long, wet hair that hung in tangled strands over her face. Her skin was pale, too pale, almost gray, and she was staring at me, not blinking, just staring. Her expression was blank, empty, like she wasn't really there. My heart stopped. My entire body went rigid. I stood there, frozen, staring at her reflection in the mirror. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then slowly I turned around. No one was there. The bathroom was empty. Just me and the flickering light and the smell of mildew. I looked back at the mirror. She was still there, standing right behind me, closer now. So close I could see the water dripping from her hair onto the floor. So close I could see her breath fogging the glass. But when I turned around again, there was nothing. Just empty space. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. Couldn't breathe. I stumbled backward, away from the mirror, away from the sink, and bolted for the door. I didn't even dry my hands. I just ran. I burst out of the bathroom, my heart pounding, and nearly crashed into the counter. The attendant looked up, startled. "You okay?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, breathing hard, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. Finally, I managed to get the words out. There's a girl. In the bathroom. In the mirror." His face went pale. He didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me with this look, like he knew exactly what I was talking about. Like he'd heard this before. "What did she look like?" he asked quietly. "Young. Maybe 8. Wet hair. Pale. She was just standing there." He nodded slowly. Then he sighed and looked down at the counter. "A girl drowned in the creek behind the station. About 10 years ago. They never found her body." He paused, then looked back at me. "People see her sometimes. In the bathroom. In the mirror." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You're joking." I wish I was. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. I just wanted to get out of there. I turned and walked toward the door, my legs feeling weak and unsteady. As I pushed it open, the attendant called after me. "Don't look back." I didn't. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove. I didn't stop for another 2 hours. Didn't look in the rearview mirror. Didn't think about what I'd seen. I just drove. When I finally pulled into a motel parking lot, I sat in the car for a long time, trying to calm down, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination, that I was tired, that my mind had been playing tricks on me. But then I pulled out my phone, and I saw it. A photo. In my gallery. A selfie. Taken in that bathroom. I didn't remember taking it. Didn't remember even pulling out my phone. But there it was. Time-stamped from that night. And in the photo over my shoulder you could see her. Clear as day. Her face partially hidden by wet hair. Her eyes dark and hollow. And she was smiling. My stomach turned. I stared at the photo, my hands trembling. Then I deleted it. I deleted it and closed the app and tried to forget. But the next night, when I opened my gallery, there was another photo. Same girl. Different background. This time she was standing in the corner of my motel room. I didn't take that photo either. I know I didn't. I deleted it again. And again the next night when another one appeared. And again the night after that. Each time she was closer. Each time the background was different. Places I'd been, places I'd stayed. But she was always there. Always in the frame. Always staring. I stopped opening my gallery. Stopped taking photos altogether. I thought maybe if I ignored it, it would stop. But it didn't. Because sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed trying to sleep, I feel it. That same cold presence. That same suffocating silence. And when I open my eyes, I see her. Standing in the corner. Dripping wet. Staring at me with those hollow, empty eyes. I tried talking to people about it. Friends. Family. A therapist. But no one believes me. They say it's stress. Trauma. A manifestation of my breakup or my anxiety. But I know what I saw. I know what I see. and I know she's still there. I looked up the story. The girl who drowned. Her name was Emma. She was 9 years old. She went missing during a family camping trip near that gas station. They searched for weeks, dragged the creek, searched the woods, but they never found her. Some people think she's still out there, still looking for help, still trying to find her way home. But I don't think that's what she wants, because every time I see her, she's smiling. That same wide, unsettling smile, like she knows something I don't, like she's waiting for something, and I'm terrified to find out what. I don't use mirrors anymore. I avoid them. I look away, because I know if I look too long, I'll see her again, standing behind me, getting closer, always closer, and one day, I'm afraid she won't just be in the reflection anymore. I don't use gas stations at night anymore, not after what happened. And I know that sounds extreme, paranoid even, but when something reaches across time and warns you about your own death, you listen. You change your habits. You avoid the places that feel wrong. Because whatever happened to me that night in September, whatever sent that voicemail, it's still out there. And it's not done with me yet. My name's Chris. I'm 32 now, but I was 29 when this happened. I was working as a regional sales manager back then, driving all over the Southwest, meeting clients, closing deals. Long hours on empty highways, truck stops and gas stations and crappy motels. It was lonely work, but it paid well and I didn't mind the solitude. At least I didn't used to. It was early September, still hot during the day, but the nights had started to cool down. I was driving back from a meeting in Santa Fe, heading home to Phoenix. It was late, around 2 a.m., and I was exhausted. My eyes felt heavy. My back ached from sitting for so long, and I just wanted to get home. But I needed gas. I'd been pushing it, watching the needle drop closer and closer to empty, telling myself I'd stop at the next station. When I finally saw one, just outside Albuquerque, I pulled off the highway. It was one of those lonely desert stops. A single building with a couple of pumps out front, surrounded by nothing but darkness and empty scrubland. There were no other cars, no other people, just me and the buzzing fluorescent lights and the wind sweeping across the lot. I parked at the pump, got out and filled the tank. The air was cold, crisp. It smelled like gasoline and dust and something faintly metallic, like rust or old blood. I tried to shake off the unease creeping up my spine, told myself I was just tired, that my mind was playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that I shouldn't be there. I went inside to pay. The attendant was a young guy, maybe early 20s, staring at his phone behind the counter. He barely looked up when I walked in. I paid cash, grabbed a bottle of water, and headed back out. The cold air hit me again as I pushed through the door, and I felt a shiver run down my back. I walked quickly to my car, unlocked it, and was about to get in when my phone buzzed in my pocket. A voicemail. I pulled out my phone and looked at the screen. One new voicemail, but the number it came from made my blood run cold. It was my own number. I stared at the screen, my heart starting to beat faster. That didn't make sense. You can't call yourself. You can't leave yourself a voicemail. I told myself it was a glitch, a spam call that spoofed my number. That happens sometimes, right? But my hands were shaking as I pressed play. The voicemail started, and I heard my own voice, panicked, breathless, screaming, "Don't go back to your car. He's waiting. He's in the back seat. Don't." The message cut off. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the pavement, and I just stood there, frozen, staring at my car. My mind was racing, trying to process what I just heard. That was my voice. I knew my own voice, but I hadn't called myself. I hadn't left that message. And yet, there it was. I forced myself to look at the car. The back window. It was fogged up, like someone had been breathing on it. Heavy condensation clinging to the glass in thick patches. My chest tightened. My hands started to shake. I took a step back, away from the car, my eyes locked on that fogged window. Someone was in there. Someone was in my car. I fumbled for my phone, picked it up off the ground, and dialed 911. My fingers were clumsy, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The dispatcher answered, and I tried to explain. Tried to tell her what was happening. But my words came out jumbled, incoherent. She told me to stay calm. Told me officers were on the way. I backed away from the car, all the way to the edge of the lot, and waited. My eyes never left that fogged window. I was terrified that any second I'd see movement. A shadow. A face pressed against the glass. But nothing happened. The car just sat there silent and still. The cops arrived about 10 minutes later. 2 officers. They asked me what happened, and I told them. Told them about the voicemail. About the fogged window. About the feeling that someone was inside. One of them, an older guy with a thick mustache, looked skeptical. But the other one, a younger woman, nodded and walked toward the car. She shined her flashlight through the windows, checked the doors, then popped the trunk. Nothing. She opened the back door and leaned inside, checking under the seats, in the footwells. Then she straightened up and shook her head. "There's no one in here," she said. I walked over, my legs feeling weak. I looked inside. She was right. The back seat was empty. No one was there. But the window was still fogged. I could see the condensation clearly. "Someone was in there," I said. My voice was shaking. "I know someone was in there." The older officer pulled out his phone. "Let me hear this voicemail." I played it for him, my own voice screaming that warning. He listened, his expression unreadable. When it finished, he handed the phone back to me. "Spoofed number," he said. "Happens all the time. Some scammer gets your number, makes it look like you're calling yourself. It's a scare tactic." "That's my voice," I said. "That's me. I know my own voice." He shrugged. "Voice synthesis. AI. They can fake anything these days." But I didn't believe him, because I didn't just recognize the voice. I recognized the words, the panic, the terror. That was me. That was my fear. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd actually said those words. That somewhere, somehow I'd screamed that warning. The officers checked the area, checked the gas station cameras. But there was nothing. No sign of anyone near my car. No sign of forced entry. They told me I was probably just tired, stressed, that my mind was playing tricks on me. They suggested I get some rest, maybe pull into a motel for the night. I didn't. I got in my car and drove. I drove straight home, barely stopping, barely breathing. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Every few minutes, I'd glance in the rearview mirror, checking the back seat, making sure it was still empty. When I finally got home, I checked the voicemail again. It was still there, time-stamped at 1:58 a.m., 2 minutes before I'd even pulled into the gas station. That's impossible. The voicemail was sent before I got there, before anything could have happened, before I could have been in danger. But it was my voice, warning me, telling me not to go back to the car. I tried to put it out of my mind, tried to move on. But then, a week later, I got a text. From my own number. "He's closer." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I didn't respond. I deleted it. But the next night, another one came. "Don't stop." And then another. "He remembers you." I don't reply. I'm too scared. Because what if I do? What if I send something back and whatever this is, whatever's on the other end, answers? What if it's me? What if it's a version of me that already knows how this ends? I looked into the gas station. Found out that 3 years ago, a man was found dead in his car in that same lot. He'd been strangled. They never found who did it. The case went cold. I don't know if that's connected. I don't know what any of this means. But I know the texts keep coming. And I know they're getting more frequent, more urgent. Last week, I got one that said, "It's almost time. I haven't been back to that gas station. I won't. But I don't think it matters anymore. Because whatever's coming, whatever's waiting, it's not tied to a place. It's tied to me, and it knows where I am. It knows where I'm going. And one day I'm going to get another voicemail, another warning, another version of myself screaming from across time. And this time, I don't think I'll be able to stop it." I saved the receipt. I don't know why. Maybe because some part of me knew I'd need proof. That one day, I'd have to tell someone what happened. That I'd need something tangible to hold on to when the memories felt too impossible to be real. It's in my wallet right now. Folded. Worn. The ink fading but still legible. And every time I see it, I feel that same cold dread crawl up my spine. My name's Ryan. I'm 28 now, but I was 26 when this happened. I was driving cross-country, moving from California to Colorado for a new job. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to leave behind a bad relationship, a dead-end job, all the mistakes I'd made in my early 20s. I packed everything I owned into my car and hit the road. It was liberating at first. Just me and the highway and the open desert stretching out in every direction. But by the time I hit Nevada, the novelty had worn off. It was late December. Freezing cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you question why anyone would choose to live in the desert. I'd been driving for hours, and I was exhausted. My eyes felt heavy. My back ached. I needed caffeine and gas. I saw the station around 1 a.m. A lonely stop sitting off the highway, surrounded by nothing but darkness and empty scrubland. The lights were on, flickering weakly against the black sky. There were no other cars, no signs of life, just the wind and the cold and the hum of the fluorescent lights. I pulled up to the pump, turned off the engine, and stepped out. The air was brutal, cut through my jacket like a knife, making my eyes water and my skin prickle. I filled the tank as quickly as I could, my fingers numb and clumsy, then went inside to pay. The store was small, cramped, shelves stocked with dusty snacks and cheap souvenirs. The attendant was nowhere to be seen. I grabbed a Red Bull from the cooler, walked up to the counter, and waited. After a minute, an older man shuffled out from the back room. He didn't say anything, just rang me up, took my cash, and handed me my change. The receipt machine beeped. Once, then again. Printed 2 receipts. The attendant tore them off and handed them to me without a word. I took them, shoved them in my pocket, and walked out. I didn't look at them until I was back in my car. I pulled them out, planning to throw one away, when I noticed something. They were both from the same station, same pump, but the timestamps were different. The first receipt was mine. Guess. Red Bull. Timestamped at 1:14 a.m. The second receipt was timestamped at 4:22 a.m., 3 hours in the future. And the items were different. Duct tape, rope, a hunting knife. My stomach dropped. I stared at the receipt, my mind trying to make sense of it. It had to be a mistake, a glitch in the system. Maybe the machine printed an old receipt. Maybe someone else had used the same pump earlier. But the timestamp was in the future. That didn't make sense. And then I saw the writing at the bottom. Handwritten in red ink, small and jagged, like someone had scratched it in with a pen. Sorry about tonight. My blood went cold. My hands started to shake. I looked up, out the windshield, scanning the lot. That's when I saw him. A man, standing under one of the lights near the edge of the lot. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. And in his hands he was holding something. I squinted, trying to see through the glare of the lights. Duct tape, a coil of rope, and a knife. The exact items from the receipt. My heart started pounding. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at my car, at me. Then he started walking, slowly, deliberately, toward me. I didn't think. I just reacted. I jammed the key into the ignition, started the engine, and threw the car into reverse. The tires screeched as I backed out of the spot, cranked the wheel, and floored it toward the exit. I didn't look back, didn't check the mirrors. I just drove. I drove for 50 miles without stopping. My hands were clenched so tight on the wheel my knuckles turned white. My heart was racing, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I kept expecting to see headlights behind me, kept expecting him to appear in my rearview mirror. But the road stayed empty. When I finally pulled over at a rest stop, I sat in the car for a long time, trying to calm down, trying to convince myself that what I'd seen was real, that I hadn't imagined it. I pulled out the receipt again, hands still trembling, and looked at it. The handwriting at the bottom had changed. It didn't say sorry about tonight anymore. Now it said, see you next time. I felt my stomach turn. I stared at the words, my mind reeling. That wasn't possible. I just looked at it 10 minutes ago. The ink was the same. The handwriting was the same. But the words were different. I threw the receipt on the passenger seat and drove. I didn't stop again until I reached Colorado. I tried to forget about it. Tried to tell myself it was a prank. A weird glitch. Something explainable. But I couldn't shake the image of that man. Standing under the light. Holding those items. Walking toward me. I kept the receipt. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed proof that it was real. That I wasn't losing my mind. I put it in my wallet and tried to move on. But last week something happened. I was at a gas station. Different state. Different city. I paid for gas and the machine printed 2 receipts again. I froze. My hands started shaking as I picked them up. The first receipt was mine. Gas. Time stamped at the current time. The second receipt was from the same station in Nevada. The one I'd stopped at 2 years ago. Same pump. Same items. Duct tape. Rope. Knife. Time stamped for tomorrow. 1:14 a.m. And at the bottom, in red ink, tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I kept checking the clock, watching the hours tick by, dreading what would happen when it hit 1:14 a.m. But nothing happened. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m. passed. Then 1:14. And nothing. I thought maybe it was over. That whatever this was, it had finally stopped. But then I got a text. From an unknown number. Just 2 words. Almost time. I blocked the number. Deleted the message. But the next night I got another one. From a different number. Same message. Almost time. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what that receipt means or who that man was or why this is following me. But I know it's not over. I know something is coming. And I know that when it does, I won't be ready. I don't stop at gas stations alone anymore. I check every receipt. Keep my doors locked. I look over my shoulder constantly. Because I know he's out there. Waiting. Watching. And one day that receipt is going to be right. One day it's going to say tonight. And I don't know if I'll be able to stop it.